Welcome to the finale of U.N.I.T.S, a 5-year legacy. Yeah, this time I don't have a cold open, so that means this is special. I'm AJ, and as implied, this video is the finale that culminates 7 storylines in Shareverse together. So, if you did see the other videos, that's great. But I know that some people aren't too crazy about watching 12 videos just to understand the context of this video. Ask Marvel. So what I would suggest is watching Digital Defenders, including the epilogue, Mecha Geisha, and Blood of Sef-Zero before getting to this. Oh, and also the introduction video of U.N.I.T.S and Shareverse, as if that wasn't obvious. Meaning that Pierce the Heavens is relegated as glorified filler. Even when Melina wins, she loses. And it won't be the only time, by the way. The finale picks up right where Blood of Sef-Zero ends in November 23rd, 2016. Miss Lilith immediately goes on vacation as the remaining members of the Sef-Zero organization recovered from that night's raid. They had dinner in Orlando while in Dread, waiting for whenever the other members would be revived and get their revenge. However, they didn't have to wait too long, as a longtime friend of the group, Krista Fang, would try to attack the group after escaping the brawl that happened just hours ago. She planned on killing the 3 then and there, but then they got some unexpected help. My reflection was in the area for dinner himself, when he realized that Fang was the same werewolf that he fought during the finale and epilogue to Prophecy. He stepped in and fought the wolf, but this action would make AJ a target to the Sef-Zero organization. The next morning, the recently revived members were planning on their next big move, and with this mindset, the magician of the group, Starla the Sensational, was elected as the leader of the organization because of her knowledge in entertainment and showmanship. She was aware of Fang's actions the night prior and decided to create an elaborate plan off of it. With Lilithmon out of commission, AJ was the next person to go after, but they wanted to do it in the most erotic way possible. Inspired by the porn puzzle game on Steam, which I own, this was the Sef-Zero Uni-Pop tournament, though it was less of a tournament and more of a set of rotating trials, and instead of sex, it was non-stop fighting, with the host of the tournament, Starla's original form, Deidre Dangerfield, taking the helm. For the next 2 weeks, every night AJ had to fight a selection of girls from the organization as a stand-in for the characters from the game. But he wouldn't be alone, since Ryder was able to snag a spot for herself so she could help him with the trials. Additionally, each member of this quote-unquote tournament had a referee, coaching the contestants in their fights, and even got to do fighting themselves because AJ's rep was Pearl and Ryder brought Ethan as a tag-along. While there were some familiar faces I discussed in Blood of Sef-Zero, there were other members I didn't bring up in that video, such as the Shaw cousins, Lynn and Avery, with their transformed forms, Sigrun Dragonbane and Wild Trisha respectively, and Diva Brando. I said Diva Brando. Okay, there it is. While AJ initially struggled and lost the first few matches of the trials, eventually he got a drive, and with help from the girls, he was able to turn the tide with these fights. But there was something more sinister bubbling in the background. During one of their fights with Gloria, Pearl was once again reminded about supposedly switching sides, and creating a horrible mistake. Again, Pearl didn't know what to think of this. Other members of the organization started to question the organization's goals. Margaret Wilson, the original form for Melissa, honestly thought that the trials were unfair and wanted to help the traitors. The issue was that Melissa always took over whenever Margaret tried to confess, who had the exact opposite thoughts. For the cousins, Sigurd took a liking to AJ's strengths and fights during the trials, gaining some respect towards him. Trisha was also brought in as well. By the start of December, the trials were starting to wane down. Right after AJ had his own fight with his referee, Starla had one more trick up her sleeve, including becoming a contestant herself and adding 2 more contestants, Supernova and June Crowley, who could turn into a werewolf named Werewolf. Okay, eventually she did get the name Sandman, but in 2016 it was still called Werewolf. Ultimately, on the night of December 9th, AJ had his final match with Starla, who was not giving it her all on him. But just when the match was over, AJ decided to go for the killing blow. But that's when he was stopped. He noticed the floor and realized he was standing in R Ranger Red's uppermint ring. He couldn't move. To which he realized that Starla wasn't alone. Obviously, Rita was there with the Blood of Sub-Zero storyline happening not long before, but she also had her Rangers, Femme Shao was there, and even Twilight. But surprisingly, Yamiya was not there. However, aside from them, there was a greatly powerful ruler among them. One AJ was not familiar with. The Dark King Nizar. He seemed to be the one that was ringleading this whole operation, which fell into Starla's plans. It turns out during the trials, Starla was secretly meeting with the past antagonists of the unit's storylines since she believed they were all connected in one way or another, from either who they know to the organization members being involved in other storylines to find Jackie. But once Blood of Sub-Zero ended, it was time for their final plan to strike, to fully get rid of all of the alignments based on the Dark King's desires. They gave AJ a warning that he would be dead by next week as the group vanished into the night. The next morning, the Great War Alignment heard the news on what happened with Starla and the new alliance. At first, nobody in the alignment knew what to do, because the next plan was to rally up everyone, and it would take time. But on that morning, Eren visited the zoo that housed the sleeping ancient warrior Mecha Geisha in New York. However, Mecha Geisha's current position was not disclosed to the public, so how did Eren exactly knew where she was? The astral owner of the zoo, Aisha, stopped her and realizing the threat, suspected Eren was sent to kill her. But right before they knew it, Nizar's soldiers stormed to the zoo, attacking both girls. Aisha held on her own while Eren cowered away. Apparently, they too were looking for Mecha Geisha's hidden room, but right when they found her cargo, the door immediately busted open. Mecha Geisha's battery had fully charged up by the presence of her ultimate evil returning. She slashed the intruders in quick succession, knowing that her time was here. Aisha was relieved to see her, but Eren rushed up to Mecha Geisha with a broken blade from one of the dead soldiers. But right before she could attack her, she broke down, screaming and crying, as she admits to the two that she was the one that killed Queen Yamiya. Flashback to the early months of 2015. Queen Yamiya had been defeated by Mecha Geisha as she made a new but rushed hideaway in Western Europe. Mecha Geisha was already questioning her actions if Yamiya was truly her ultimate evil, not after seeing two premonitions during her storyline's finale. Meanwhile, some of Yamiya's men at this point were Pearl and Gloria, as the two were looking for Jackie at this time. Pearl decided that they were going nowhere with being part-time henchmen for the Queen, as she made a private meeting with her. But during this meeting, something snapped between them. While in Yamiya's quarters, both her and Pearl accidentally linked into an astral plane of existence, though not in their normal forms, but rather their original hosts. Meaning what Eren saw before her was a poor red-headed girl chained up against an endless wall. With this sight, Eren decided to free the girl from the chains, and as soon as she did, the girl faded away. Now back into their bodies, Pearl noticed that the queen that stood beside her had already imploded. Suddenly, the makeshift castle began to collapse, leading into Yamiya's other soldiers to implode as well. Pearl rushed back to Gloria and told her they needed to evacuate. Almost everything around them was collapsing in on itself, and likewise, the generals too also imploded. Once Pearl and Gloria drove away as fast as possible, a bright light emitted behind them. When they turned around, they noticed that Queen Yamiya's hideout was completely gone. They were the only two survivors. So the reason why Queen Yamiya was never seen again after the finale of Mecha Geisha was because Eren inadvertently killed her. And as to why nobody saw this explosion, because this happened on the same day as the finale to Prophecy, so everybody was focused more on that. And how come Pearl blocked this memory from her head? Once Eren found out about this incident in Pearl's journal entry the next morning, she wrote down in her notebook for Pearl to forget about that moment last night. And this is why she didn't show up to Orlando the first night Ryder went there in Blood of Sub-Zero, because she knew that she would be in close proximity with an associate to Mecha Geisha. After this confession, Mecha Geisha stopped and thought. It did make sense why Yamiya never returned again, and with Aaron's truth bomb, they were able to piece a story. Nizar brainwashed the original Yamiya to become his servant in the coming years that he would enable his global domination. However, when Hiroyoko killed her, Nizar's evil energy influenced her instead, leading her to believe that she was Yamiya, which explains why Mecha Geisha awoken in 2014, because of that trail of Nizar's evil energy. And the visions Mecha Geisha saw in the finale were the captured souls of the two girls brainwashed by him, meaning the girl that Eren freed was Hiryoko's soul. And as a motive for the Dark King, he doesn't really have a motive, he just wants to conquer the world. There's nothing wrong with having a one-dimensional final boss, especially when he's surrounded by other more interesting villains. I think it evens things out. But with this dark aura around him, he was able to convince the other villains to side with him, including the Revenants. But with Mecha Geisha reactivated, the heroes from all 7 storylines got together. Together, they called themselves the Unionized Numbers of Incidental Tactical Squads, or in its abbreviated name, UNITS. See, I even gave the storyline name and origin story. Don't say I never did anything for you. Before the big final showdown, there were a couple of extra notes to acknowledge. First off, because of the number of major generals from Nizar's side, not every protagonist from all storylines would participate. Edward would be taking Melina's spot for the Revenants, since that was the format they were used to in Coral Knights. So, once again, even when Melina gets hospitality, she always gets the short end of the stick. Additionally, since the D-Reaper was retired and was not involved in this war, Takato would have to instead battle Feng Xiao with help from AJ, who did fight her 3 years ago. And for Aisha, she wanted to contribute fighting too, since she believed that she was the glue that held everyone together. Except not really, but whatever, let's make Aisha feel special for once. But outside of these changes, this was the main loadout for the upcoming matchups. As for a handful of Sub-Zero organization members, those such as Lin and Avery wanted to help out UNITS because of how Sigrun omitted the traitor's efforts during the trials. Finelli Patrick, one of the members that got teased on the most, also wanted to join to get back at her tormentors. Throughout the week, several attacks from several foes all occurred across the globe, with UNITS stepping in to resolve the problem. However, these fights ended in a stalemate, all culminating in one final battle that Friday. But on the night before that day, Eren was walking alone, believing that her actions were a direct cause of this needless conflict. But that's when she was stopped by a former friend, Isa Powers, Super Sojo Girl. She told Eren that this fight would prove their friendship, and in the end, they would both be seen as heroes protecting who they serve. But Eren said that as soon as this war ended, she wanted to disappear from this world. Speaking of, you might be wondering why Isa is in a teenager body and not in either her child or super buff form. For some Sub-Zero organization members, they have not just one form, but 2. Jackie has 2, Warbeast has 2, Annie has 3, and even Fang has 2 forms. Why am I bringing this up? Well, you'll see. Additionally, Margaret had a talk with Ryder that she wanted to help the traitors from the start. However, Melissa always got in the way. She pleaded to Ryder that if Ronaldo fights Melissa in the final battle, she shouldn't regret killing her. But on December 16th, 2016, the stage was set for the final battle of UNITS, and it took place in where else but Manhattan. And if that sounds familiar, it's because just a year prior, on that day, Samus and Rosalina had their rematch to conclude Super Smash Crew. I promise this is not a coincidence. In the early hours of that day, all of the astral souls in the city were evacuated. Nizar materialized his fortress to appear in a secluded area of the city. Yeah, good luck with that. leading in hundreds of consultants, Onis, equestrian soldiers, and Ranger Blue Child Soldier upperments to run rampant. Units made their approach, and thus the war reached its climax. Everyone, including their mother, literally, all showed up to this day. With some people did what they could, those such as Mecha Geisha was in a determined state that she would cut through anyone in her way. Eventually, the Sub-Zero organization members made their way to the battlefield, and as for the members of units, they made sure one member targeted one girl at a time, as to avoid anyone getting their curse when they die. But this method proved faulty since units was losing the upper hand. But that's when a saving grace came into place. Coming right out of her vacation, Lilithmon returned. Because she had the attack patterns of all members of the organization fresh in her databanks, she slided Digivolved into Mastemon and fought the members at once. Units realized this allowed them to battle the other threats while she was used as the distraction. This was where the ex-members of the Sub-Zero organization chipped in and helped, Vixia getting some revenge on her bullies. But Aaron still didn't feel confident in making a move. That is, until she was stopped by Aiza. But Aiza didn't hesitate on fighting Aaron, as Aaron tried to resist Pearl from emerging. Just as Margaret foretold the night prior, Melissa fought Rolanda in a standoff. But that is when Melissa turned her sights on Aaron struggling to fight. And through this instinct to help, Margaret's conscience re-emerged, creating a second form for her. This was Margaret Plus, now helping units and fighting Aiza. Rolanda was beyond confused. Eventually, as the forces from Nizar dwindled, it was time for the heroes to have one final match with the Dark King, giving Mecha Geisha her chance to fulfill her purpose. But at the last minute, Aaron also wanted to join them since she wanted to find peace on what she did back in 2015. Each member of units fought their respected foes, with Nizar being saved for last. Mastemon wanted to fight Starla, but AJ got there first and killed Starla almost immediately. For Mecha Geisha, she had to deal with a horrid joke. Nizar had corrupted another innocent girl to do his bidding. Mecha Geisha, now knowing the truth, had no regrets as she put the punished soul to rest. And as for Aaron, she faced something that could only belong in her nightmares. The reason why none of the souls from Queen Yumia's kingdom went to the afterlife was that Nizar was using them and contorting them into monstrosities, hence why units also had to fight the reconstructed versions of Yumia's generals. But as for Aaron, her fight was with the stitched-together chimera of Yumiya and Hiroko's souls as a grade A killing weapon. She knocked Aaron around as she didn't put up much of a fight, but as the being known as the Shadow was about to go for the killing blow, Aaron's memories flashed before her eyes following that faithful day. There she was reminded about those who understood her actions and wanted to see the best in her always, giving Aaron the confirmation that what she did wasn't entirely her fault. And as such, Aaron began to transform into a new second form. Based off of Laura's awakening abilities, this was Awakened Aaron, having a much more confident body, much like Pearl, but this time, Aaron was in the driver's seat. And with this form, she was able to eradicate her foe, finally putting both of the girls' souls to rest. All that was left to now was Nizar. While everybody had their own personal grudges, they all understood that this was Mecha Geisha's fight, her ultimate evil. Nizar, a demon king, naturally was strong, having an excellent skill in magic, and he was also able to copy the other units' villains' abilities and moves for himself. Everybody was starting to struggle, but with Mecha Geisha's battery going into overdrive, she looked at her 9 allies and collected their strengths to retaliate against Nizar. This led into round 2 of the fight, with only Nizar and Mecha Geisha dueling it out, and with one powerful strike from Shadowflower, her personal sword, she defeated Nizar, and used all of her force to fully eradicate him. And just like that, the battle was over. Mecha Geisha had defeated her ultimate evil after staying in hibernation for centuries. but she didn't have time to think about her new purpose in life, as she was surrounded by the happy members of units celebrating. While everyone outside had defeated the last of the Alliance, some people did retreat, but their wounds were bad enough that they wouldn't be a threat for a while. With that, everyone indulged in a party during the holiday season. For people like Mega Geisha and Aaron, they realized how many people were there for them, leaving their worries behind and enjoying the party. While Mega Geisha's adrenaline would run out, leaving her battery empty, she could at least enjoy the time she had before shutting down. And so, members of Digital Defenders, the Guardians, Laura and her retainers, the Spikes program, a handful of people from Coral Knights, the Restorers, and the Sef-Zero organization Traders all spent the rest of the year in highest hopes, as the unit's multi-storyline fully came to a close. Except nobody told Armin about the final battle or the celebration at the end because he was stuck in Paris. Sorry, guess that's what happens when you sign tight NDAs. At least he got to spend the holidays privately with his wife. And so, that was U.N.I.T.S, a 5-year legacy. Honestly, I'm relieved that I was able to get this series done. I thought it did a good job explaining each storyline to their fullest. As for the next video, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm gonna go back to Disney Fighting Evolution, a new video essay because I know those do great, but I do know that now U.N.I.T.S is over, I can get back to the remasters of the Smash Parody series, with the next installment being the Super Smash Lesbians 1-year anniversary, which somewhat ties into the finale video. What do I mean by that? Well, you'll see it whenever I release that video. The links to the DeviantArt creators will be listed in the description for this video, just so you could get a showcase to see where I got my inspirations from when making U.N.I.T.S. Except for the fact that I can't because YouTube hates whenever I post external links to DeviantArt websites because they are considered pornographic, even though you need a DeviantArt account just to access the mature content. So you can thank YouTube once again for making my life a living nightmare. So with that being said, please like the video as well as all videos in U.N.I.T.S, and subscribe for more content about other topics. With that, I'm AJ, and I'll see you all in the next one.